classes. We can talk about different concepts and learn about different topics that affect project management. It's kind of like a meeting of the minds or a melding of the minds, whichever you prefer, to kind of help us all with our project management needs on our campus, whether you are considered a project manager by title or not. In our day-to-day activities in IT, most people, if not all people, do some sort of project management, even if you're just managing yourself and your own personal projects. We do also hold monthly webinars on the fourth Thursday of the month from 11 to noon. We're next going to meet in September and October. You can see the dates there. We've done a couple different things. Varya McAlison-Doyle from SUNY Cortland just did one on agile projects and how she's starting to put agile methods and tools into her projects, even though they're not considered 100%. It was very interesting. The recording is on our CPD YouTube page and also available in the project management workplace group. We've also done things on project review boards that was held by one of project managers at Stony Brook. We've talked about the differences between the CAPM and the PMP from PMI, some Project Management Institute, the certifications. And we've also done a presentation, Sean Moriarty from SUNY Oswego did one on taking a village to create a digital campus. That was a very interesting presentation, definitely check that one out. There's a bit.ly there at the bottom, and I'll also post this in the chat so that you guys can take a look at it. If you're already on Workplace, this will take you right to the group and you can join. Everybody is approved once they join. The only reason we have it as a closed group is because we do have some campuses that are not on Workplace that they have to use a private email address. The other thing is that if you're not on Workplace and you would like some assistance getting onto Workplace, I can connect you with the CPD's Kelly Williamson. She is our community manager and she manages Workplace. She'd be more than happy to get you in or help you with any issues that you may be facing. So like I said, the moderators of the community of practice are myself. I'm a program coordinator specializing in technical programs at the SUNY Center for Professional Development, and I'll let Krista introduce herself.
Morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Krista Glassman. Many of you may know me from the 10 years or so I've been here at SUNY. We started our project management office at iTech almost 10 years, actually like 10 years ago. Now I have a staff of 3 people, and we were charged with putting some frameworks and repeatable processes in at iTech way back when, and we're going to talk a little bit about those and use Jon Brennan's professional development session that he presented yesterday, as well as the project management foundations seminars and workshops that have been held to get our panelists to discuss some of the things that's worked for them when running projects at their organizations.
Thank you, Krista. So now I'll introduce our moderators and our panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. There's a little bit more information on how to contact them as well on the screen that you can get. So first we have Jon Brennan. Jon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody, Jon Brennan here. I'm the CIO at Hudson Valley Community College currently. I've been in higher ed, mostly in the SUNY system in my higher ed career, but also in a little bit of private college. So I've worked in just about every kind of project management from informal to the most formal. So I'm glad to be a moderator here. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you, Jon. Next, we have Romine Prescott. Romine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. As it says, I've been with SUNY for over 23 years. That's as a professional. I was also an undergrad at SUNY Potsdam. I was hired in late '96 as our first help desk tech at the time, and have worked my way up and done just a little bit of everything: server administration, network administration, lab support, help desk support, and served as our acting CIO at SUNY Potsdam for a year and a half. And I am now just fresh at iTech, where I started earlier this month. I'm looking forward to the change and getting oriented. As I said, I've done a little bit of everything. I'm not formally certified in project management, but it's fair to say I've had a hand in managing many projects over the years.
Thank you, Romine. And then we have Zachary Jones. Zach, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, I'm Zach Jones. I am the Associate Director of Telecommunications at Binghamton University. I have my PMP certification, which I got a little bit ago last year. I've been doing mostly IT infrastructure projects. I also do with telecom some project rollouts with upgrades and new services and software that we buy at Binghamton University.
Thank you, Zach. And last but definitely not least, Deb McClintock.
I'm Deb McClintock from SUNY Oneonta. As you can see from my bio, I joined the SUNY system in 1998. I'm also a product of the SUNY system. I graduated with an associate's degree from SUNY Delhi and my bachelor's from SUNY IT, which is now SUNY Poly. I have managed a number of projects formally and informally for going on 25 years now for different institutions. And I do not have any certification other than that from the School of Hard Knocks.
Thanks, Deb. All right, so a little bit of information. This is an open session, meaning that you can ask questions if you are interested in. We do have some seeding questions we're going to ask the panel to get the discussion going. But if you are interested in asking a follow-up question to something we've asked or a question of your own, feel free to place it in the chat and we will make sure that it gets asked. So I will turn everything over to John and we can get started. Thank you. John, I believe you're on mute.
Too many things going on over here and I couldn't. Anyway, sorry. So go ahead and put your questions in the chat. We want this session to be for you as much as possible. So I do have a list of questions, but if you have one, please interject. We want to make your voices heard. So just jumping off, I guess we can go through and we can ask some of the questions that we have listed already. Starting out, so can you tell me a little bit about how your organization delineates between projects and services and operations work and support work? And maybe Romine, we can start with you.
When you say my organization, I'm kind of, between places. I just started at iTech, so most of my experience comes from Potsdam, where I was. I can say at Potsdam, the delineation you're talking about kind of came from the organizational structure of the IT department. That we were siloed but well coordinated between each other. The help desk was one area. The banner support team was another area. Network another area. And so that's the organizational structure there. And we had the luxury that Potsdam was small enough that IT was consolidated within one organization. It wasn't. I know it can be distributed on some campuses. Relative to iTech, my observation is that they are very well structured for this. There are people dedicated to all the things in your list there, and the communication between those teams seems to be rather robust. And that's very important too. I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Deb, how about you?
Say that we try to follow the more formal project management definitions, something new, or a serious rework of something that already exists would be a project. And then everything else is an enhancement from an operational perspective, and it really, from our perspective, I think it depends on the scope of the change. If it's, like I said, if it's a dramatic, like going from banner 8 to banner 9 is a project. Even though banner already exists, the scope of that change is a significant change for us. But and then anything new that comes through the door, we want to do a formal intake on, make sure that we understand what problem they're trying to solve, and while it's not necessarily like we don't have formal scoping documents, we don't have formal intakes and stuff like that, we do try to follow at least the principles when it comes to the new projects.
So how do you evaluate those projects? How do you take, when you get a new request, how do you evaluate those projects in terms of institutional? Is it a cabinet decision? Do you have a team that evaluates those projects?
We actually have a rubric that we follow that works out of the ServiceNow demand module. So it talks about, institutional effectiveness. It talks about, the impact to the department. If there's a distinctiveness aspect to it, so we actually have a formal rubric for those things to go through, and they are supposed to be reviewed by a governance structure. There are some projects that kind of circumvent that just because there's a compliance need, those kinds of things. If you've got to do something because, that's going to affect financial aid, well, yeah, we're going to do that project. But, we do have that formal rubric for other projects for, things that are wanted versus those things that are compliance.
Zach, how about you? When you're thinking about the way your college takes in work, whether it's project work or service work, what are some of the challenges associated with that process?
Well, part of it's just the time that it takes, right? Because what we did before, we had actual project management. Would you just send something to me as the telecom director, and I would review it and say, okay, let's go ahead and do it. Where now we take it through a ServiceNow intake form. You submit it, then we have a PMO office who reviews all submitted project forms through ServiceNow, and then they request you to do a demand sheet to see how much time and effort you're going to take up from how many staff members you're going to need, because they're also looking at IT infrastructure from, like we do cabling and AP installs and all that kind of good stuff. And they're also managing it for the for the project side, if they need SQL programmers or other than database guys, whatever else they might need. So some of it's just the time involved, right? Because it used to be so simple. I just shoot an email, say, hey, I want to do something. We talk about it, and like, yeah, all right, we're good to go. And so now people like, wow, you want me to put down the scope of work? I can't just say install this and walk away. And that keeps a lot of the change management down, and lets us do better scheduling. So it's a little more of a lift in the front end, I guess, but it pays off with the project management on the backside.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that. Most people, when they're early in their project management careers, want to jump right to the execution phase because that's where all the magic happens. So, Romine, in your area, what's the relationship between project management and the IT service and governance groups?
Again, at Potsdam, there was no formal project management office or anything like that. We would, relative to the other experiences, highly encourage everybody to just funnel their requests straight to the help desk. The help desk did basic triage of everything that came in and delegated where possible. They're undergoing some changes right now and separating out the tier 1 and the tier 2 and 3 things. But at iTech, everything comes in through ServiceNow as either an incident or a request. And then it's just as John was describing, everything gets triaged and assessed. If it's a major change to a system that's supported, it has to go through the change control process, which does add some time to things, but it's necessary for keeping, when you're responsible for so many priorities, everybody thinks the thing they need is the most important thing, and relative to them it is. But relative to the scope of responsibility and other projects going on, it needs to be put in the mix with everything else and then prioritized. And that's a big part of the project management process, is not just figuring out what's involved in that one project, but how does that one project fit in with all of the other projects that are going on, because they're most of the time using the same resources, especially when it's people we're talking about.
Definitely. So we have a question from Tina in the chat. She wants to know, does anybody else have the problem, which is getting your organization to even recognize, let alone try to follow these project management guidelines. What advice might you give for that?
John, I can jump in on that a little bit. One of the things that, we're working on is trying to facilitate that for the users. Like Zach was saying, I get 10 emails a week asking for something. And, if I feel like it's, something that I can push back through our normal, request process, I'll enter a ticket in myself and then send them back to the user saying, I created this request for you in our system. And someone will get back to you soon, so that they now understand that I'm following the rules too. And I'm trying to do more of that from the project management perspective. But there's a balance. We want people to understand that we're, trying to do the best thing for the campus and following, doing the best thing with resources. So when folks contact us and they have that new thing, I might say, that sounds like something great. Can I come and meet with you and talk a little bit more about what it is that you're trying to do, and do that intake process that is kind of taking them down the formal project management path. But they don't necessarily know that I've invoked that. They just think that they reached out to me and I'm going to come and talk to them. And they may not realize that we've done that formal project management thing until I come to them and say, okay, here are what I think your deliverables are. And it's not that I'm trying to surprise them. I'm just trying to really make it easy for folks so that it doesn't become onerous, so that they don't roll their eyes and say, oh my God, you're going to make, those kinds of things. So, and again, that's, as Romine said before, Oneonta is pretty small. I have a very good relationship with a lot of users that we work with. So I've already established a lot of relationships there. So, my trying to make it easier for them to navigate the IT rules and regulations, if you will, is really a way for us to try to become better partners for them, because I think that's also really important.
And does your CLevel suite support project management? Like, how do you get them to buy into that process?
I think that we're still in the process of trying to get that buy-in. We recently hired a technology solution specialist, and a lot of that role for us is going to be, the organization of the project management work. We don't have a PMO, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish repeatable processes for, that intake, creating, the process flow, so the folks, can get themselves into the stream. One of the things that, I think we and many campuses struggle with is the people that are very vocal. You have the big 6 departments that get a lot of work from IT, and then you have the rest of the campus that, kind of has to struggle for the scraps. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a process where, the task or the request, regardless of where it comes from, is what is evaluated for the work. So that way we get more of the academic departments get more of our time, and we really can do those projects of merit, things that might have a big impact on students, those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you. Joe Hoot asks, I understand that some are actively using the demand module, and I'm curious if you're also leveraging the demand workbench to help prioritize all of your work efforts.
From ServiceNow, demand module in ServiceNow.
Yes.
Yeah, so we do use the demand module in ServiceNow, but I don't believe that we have done much with the demand workbench. I would probably have to refer to Andy Martin, who is our Enterprise Application Services Director. They use the demand module quite a bit more than I do. But I don't think that we're using the workbench today.
I'd also have to check with our PMO office. I mean, they're the ones who review the demands. I'm personally not using the workbench.
All right, so what do you think would help campus IT management be more supportive of the expectations of the functional areas when it comes to their projects and their service needs? Romine?
Oh boy. Well, communication, I think is the key across all of this stuff. Deb talked about reaching out and building relationships with those areas. That's important to the extent it's possible. It's easier on a smaller campus, I'm sure, than it is on a larger campus. Smaller campuses, you tend to get to actually be able to get to know the people that you're dealing with. Getting to know the functional areas are the subject matter experts. I'm never going to know all there is to know about finance or all there is to know about admissions. But getting to know a little bit about how their operations work can go a long way toward interpreting their needs and fitting them into the priority structure that I was talking about earlier. So regular meetings, reach out, and relationship building with those areas, I think, is important.
All right. So Zach, yesterday, I don't know if you were in my session, but I made a point to not reinvent the wheel. And it's obviously not a point that I invented. This is me not reinventing the wheel and taking the best practices of PMP and other trainings and stuff. So people get used to repeatable processes and productivity increases as a result of all of that. So I'm wondering, what processes and steps do you follow with every project? Yesterday, I covered the 7 documents that I always include, but what do you have in your project every time? If you needed to cut the corners on your project to make something work, what don't you cut?
The main things we have a basic like project scope, the project. So we've started filling out project plans, so we know, who to communicate, right? There's like a communications plan built in there. What technicians are working on this? Who should we relay the data to? Who are stakeholders? Usually we skip a little bit on the risk management, but now with COVID, like I've actually taken your class before. You're like, what if you're at a wedding and wolves attack? And you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. You're like, well, what if everyone on campus went home? You're like, never happened. So we'd probably do a little more risk management now. But yeah, we have a whole project plan. We break it down, what people are looking for, when we're going to give it to them, because that's helping us stop change orders before, because with us, right, we're on campus supporting campus folks, so we're not like a construction crew that would whack them for change orders, but we're usually like, all right, we'll do that, but that's affecting our other work because we're not planning on that 1 week. But yeah, we do project plans with scope in them, assigning to, we create tasks and we assign those to folks so they can put them on their project schedules, and we know who has what assigned to them and what they're working on. And then we also started using notes in ServiceNow, because that way it relays all of your important information to everyone without you being like, all right, did I send this email to John? Did I send this email to Krista? Like nope, you put it there. And even if you're not getting the updates, you go in there and you look at the nursing school and you're like, oh, like here's the drawings we got, here's the the schedule has been updated. It keeps everything up to date. So ServiceNow has been really big for us. We tried some Microsoft Office. It didn't really work out for our group, but project meetings, we have regular project meetings to keep everyone updated as well. So I don't think I have 7 documents, as many as you might, but we have a few things that keep us going and keep us on track.
So a general question for the whole group, are any of you using formalized project management processes, or is this ad hoc for the most part?
Yeah, we're mostly ad hoc.
Yeah, we've been trying to standardize ours a little bit more, especially having a PMO office. And then he's got a board that he's got to clear all the projects through. So we're getting more and more standardized and following PMI a little bit better than we used to.
Are you using a tool or just Excel documents, or how are you tracking those projects?
ServiceNow. All of our stuff is in ServiceNow.
I'd say that half to maybe a third of our stuff is in ServiceNow. We are in the process of reevaluating how we deploy the ServiceNow project module, and trying to reinvigorate that process. One of the issues that we have is that, in many cases we have projects that include people inside and outside of our IT organization, and we're trying to expand on that. So using ServiceNow with the way that we're licensed doesn't really allow folks outside of IT to participate, getting tasks and stuff like that. So that's one of the challenges that we've had with the tool. I would say that, what we're really trying to do is trying to figure out who's responsible for tasks. And then, the project manager then really is responsible for organizing all of that and, reporting and talking to stakeholders and sponsors and stuff like that. But again, it's not as formal as maybe it should be. And, we really are trying to focus on doing better there. I think that's all you can do is, try to do better, a little better every day.
Certainly, project management is all about continuous improvement. So thinking about the processes that you do have, and whatever formalized or informal processes you have, when you get a project tossed over the fence at you, for lack of a better word, somebody's gone and got a grant, or they've gone to a conference and they came back with a great idea, and now they've gotten money approved for it and it's already purchased, and now they're here handing it over to you to make it work. How do you get to a point where you can kind of get your hands around that project in a way that makes sense from a project management perspective? Like, how do you get back to the initiation and origination phases of that project with those stakeholders?
I'll start with that one. That's hard. Hopefully you're in the conversation earlier than you described, but we all know that's not always the case, because what you described happens far more frequently than any of us would like. Somebody goes out and gets the thing. They've been assured by the sales rep that it'll integrate, no problem. It'll take about an hour, and then 3 weeks later, you're still not done. So we've all experienced a fair amount of that, I'm sure. And I think the key is to get a hold of the product's technical people rather than the salespeople as quickly as you can. Find out what the real deal is, and then decide how you're going to proceed with the implementation. The horse is already out of the barn at that point. All you can do is try and minimize how far they're going to get before you can rein them in. It's a done deal. I doubt anybody here has the power or the ability to say, no, send that back, because if you'd come to us, we would have suggested this other path or this other thing, or we already have that in some other form that you didn't even know about. That's usually not possible. So just make the best lemonade you can, I guess, at that point.
The only thing that I think I would add to that too is that you still have to go back to the department and find out what problem they were trying to solve. You still have to talk to them. It doesn't matter what the tool is. What do you want to do with this tool you just bought? So that we can, do our best to, and again, it's the lemonade thing. We want to take the tool and try to solve the problem that you were trying to solve. I think it's also really important to communicate with them the limitations. The vendor sold you this, they told you it could do all of these things, but that's not true, and here's how it's going to work. And make sure they understand that right out of the gate, because even though we have it and we bought it and we're installing it, that expectation setting is key. So that they know, the vendor sold you a bill, and we're going to do the best we can with this. And then in your next cycle, before you renew the license, let's have a conversation, to give them that second opportunity. And again, that continuous process improvement. We made a bad purchase, maybe not. Maybe this works out fantastically for us. But, let's evaluate this at the end and see if what you bought really meets your needs. And if it doesn't, then let's, invoke this more formally, and we can help you investigate something maybe to replace that if we need to.
How about you, Zach?
It's Krista. I'd like to add something to that, Deb, that was really important. You said to go back and re-ask the question, which was, what do you expect this to do for you? What were you thinking about as an outcome when you purchased this product? And to that, project management's really focused on successful outcomes. Part of your scope and your initiation steps is always to ask those questions. What are your top 3 outcomes that you're expecting to get when we're done here? add that to your scope, and then go back when you're finished with your project and be sure that you've close or met those expectations or those outcomes.
Yeah, I would definitely echo Krista's sentiment on that. And if you try to get a PMP and you start studying for that and you take that test, you will find out very quickly that that test is all about finding out where you are in the project management process, because your questions that you're going to be asked are all about situations where you get dumped into a situation just like this question, where something's been purchased or you've been dumped in halfway through a project or the project manager changes, and you have to know where you are. And if you don't know where you are in the project, you take it back to the start. And even if the decision's already been made and you can't unmake that decision, you're forced to do whatever they're telling you to do. You still go back and you fill out that project proposal, business case, and get that charter and whatever else project documents that you use, because those are going to be the pieces that cover your assets in the end. At the end of the day, if you hand over a project that's not to their expectations, if you don't have those founding documents right from the start, you're going to be in trouble. And it doesn't matter if you were thrown in the middle, you were still the project manager and you're going to be the one holding the bag at the end of the day. Okay, so yesterday I also talked about a case study, my own project where we needed to rehabilitate the classrooms. And in my personal example yesterday, we had a prerequisite project that we needed to do, which was reorganize the functional department to make sure that I needed the authority over the classroom and the people that were responsible for the classrooms and all of that to make that project a success. There were interpersonal conflicts between team members that just made the operational stuff just not tenable. So that was an absolute requisite for us. So when you think about your own assessment of your own organizational culture before your project starts, do you think there are conflicts that you need to remove first? And if you can think of an example, how do you get that information? And Zach, why don't we start with you?
I think some of the conflicts I run into is it's actually because it used to be the way we were set up. It was telecom was part of other groups, and now they've split off and created their own departments. And I used to go to these project meetings and it was like, oh, I'll get information for networking and AV and blah blah blah, and then you come back and now I do that and they're like, why are you dipping into my info? Why? It's none of your business. And like, look, I'm here to help manage the project and to save time, and because actually on our campus we've created a sort of like a stepping stone, right? Because like as a technician you can start learning more and then start to kind of come up and be a project manager. It's like a next level. And so some of these guys have been techs for a while. They don't want to be a tech. They want to start managing projects, but it's also like, I need you to still do what you're doing, and sometimes let me, like, I'm not trying to take that power from you. Like, that's not what a project manager is, right? We don't know everything. I don't know everything about door access. I don't need to know everything about door access, right? I need to know, how to manage the schedule and the budget and all those sort of things. I don't need to know that it takes you 2 hours to wire this joint to that connection. Like, I'm not trying to come onto your job site and point you in that sort of direction. And so that's probably the major conflict that's we have to deal with, and a lot of that's just communications. To be like, look, I don't want to be the camera guru. I don't want to be the cable plant guru. But I want to make sure the project that I was assigned is completed on time. I'm just here to save you time and effort, because usually they kind of stop thinking it's so awesome when they go to a meeting for 2.5 hours and they get 5 minutes of information that they needed. Like, that's one of the things I'm there for, because you don't need to be sitting there for 2 hours and get 2 seconds of information. So that's, like I said, that's probably the biggest one that I have.
Romine, how about you? Do you run into similar conflicts where people think you're trying to encroach on their turf, or any other kind of organizational issues?
You do need to be wary of micromanagement versus macro management, which is what he was alluding to there. But I think the biggest hurdle that I have run into over time is they want to do what that comes when somebody first learns about the project that's about to happen. and sometimes it's early in the process, sometimes it's later in the process, after the horse has already left the barn, as I said earlier. But getting everybody on board when they already have full plates is, I think, a big hurdle. And I think more communication earlier is always better. But no matter how early it gets there, there's always going to be somebody who is totally surprised, shocked, and needs convincing to get started on the thing.
So last question that I have, and I think I'll ask each of you to answer this one. Think of a project that you or your staff have completed, or you're almost complete. Do you think your project is a good candidate for a proof of concept? And what leads you to that decision? Zach, why don't we start with you?
Sorry, I'm muting myself. I think that we are, just because a lot of the formalization that we've done, because it's just making that like systematic, repeatable routines, right? The facilities just used to send requests like, hey, we're rehabbing Science 4, and they would tell the networking guy, and then someone else would tell me, hey, we're rehabbing Science 2, and I might not tell networking. Networking doesn't tell us, and all of a sudden we're like, hey, did you guys buy 15 switches for this job? And so that communication level that we've been able to show across our groups, it's something that we repeat easily and almost every day, of sharing project information. And there's a lot less lack of project knowledge that goes on campus, either from, so I deal mostly with facilities and construction projects. So we used to get left out of the loop all the time. It would be, oh, by the way, we just rehabbed 7 classrooms. No one mentioned to you that we needed 20 data drops in each one of those rooms. So it's stuff that's I think it's helped communications across our entire campus with the projects that we do, and it's simple things that we do, and they're very easily repeated. And because some of the things that just started with, I took your class there at iTech or wherever it is up there on the circle. And it was just right, because in that back of that book, don't you give some forms and stuff, of basic forms? And so some of it just started with that. It was like, all right, let's just go some schedules and the scope sheets and that kind of stuff. And once you start sharing information back to facilities, they're like, oh wow, we know where he is. It used to just be they would hand me the schedule and be like, coming to the end and be like, wait, you're not done yet? And so now any of those leads and lags that I have are easily communicated, and I think they're changing is communication. So I think we're producing some better projects. We're sharing more knowledge, so that's really helped us. And I mean, it also helps in the CIO level, right? Because they now go into service now, and they're like, hey, look, we've got 70 open projects and we've closed 22 of them. And they're asking, what are you doing? They can easily see it without even asking. There's all kinds of graphs and diagrams that they can look fancy and show off to other folks.
Okay. Deb, how about you?
I think that when I'm not sure that I have a good answer for this question, to be honest with you. Some of the projects we have are tremendous in scope. Like we're in the process of doing we're in our 3rd year of our identity and access management project. And then we have smaller projects where we're working on moving this department into SharePoint. I think the thing that is, and Zach already alluded to this, is creating those repeatable processes, getting departments used to me running them through that repeatable process. Making sure that our leadership knows that, this is where that department is in our repeatable process. And again, that helps with communication. It helps with expectation management. It helps us manage the work, organize the work. We know what the next step in that process is for us. So I think that, we're in the midst of, we've kind of coined we're going to do a grand opening of Microsoft Teams. How stores open, and they're open for 6 months, and then they do the big grand opening. So we've been Teams only mode since last July. So we're almost in our 1st year of Teams. But when we all went remote in March, the team's utilization went up out, like it was over, I want to say 80% increase in utilization, from like the first week in March to the second week of March. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to capitalize on that. We've got, now we have a captive audience. We have all these people that are now in the Teams console. Well, let's start talking about channels. Let's start talking about, how you're using your documents in SharePoint and how we connect that to Teams, how you can, kind of change the way you collaborate, so we're really using this as like one of the cornerstones of our digital transformation journey. So again, that's all starting out of that, I'm going to go talk to this department about Teams. We're going to do that inventory and then, take each department step by step through that process.
So with that giant project, or maybe your identity access project, did you start with a proof of concept with a small group of users and test it in a real world scenario, or did you just kind of do planning and then go live for everybody at the same time?
No, we always do a pilot with IT services. We've got about, between 40 and 50 employees, given, the different cycles and stuff like that. So anytime we roll something out, we always do it to ourselves first, so that if it is inflicting a wound, the wound happens here first, and we can figure out how to mitigate that for the rest of the campus. So yeah, anytime we roll something out, it rolls out to, we've got a small group of, early people. So like that Ring 1 group, that we'll do stuff with and to, and then once we have an idea that it's going to work the way we expect it to, we'll pull the rest of IT in. And then we have a couple of departments in campus that wind up being our pilot groups. So we've piloted twice before it hits an actual functional area pilot group. And we do it that way mainly because by the time we get to actual users, not that our IT people are fake, but by the time we get to, customers, we ferreted out a lot of processes and know where a lot of things are going to go wrong, so that we know how to manage things and that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely. I think testing and piloting is key.
Romine, you get the last word. How about you?
Again, drawing from my experience at Potsdam, the project that comes to mind was about 4 years ago when we jumped into O365 away from a homegrown open source email and calendar infrastructure. Lots of projects, affect a specific functional area or what have you, but this was gargantuan in that it affected everybody: students, faculty, staff. It had to be planned and implemented, like nothing else. Communication was key. You had to let people know what was going on and when, because we were not just shifting to a new system, but we had to migrate all the existing information. We preserved all of the email and all of the calendars and shunted it into the new system. So communication was key. Testing, like Deb said, we tested it on ourselves first. Then we picked a department we had a good relationship with and had them go next. And then we had to do it in stages for the rest of the campus over several weeks. All of that was well planned, I thought, well communicated, and for the most part went off without a hitch. There were always a few glitches, a couple of accounts that have weird stuff in it that you can't account for, but that went off pretty well. And if I had to pick something to hold up as a model, I think that would be it.
Very good. Thank you so much. Well, it looks like we're just about out of time here, folks. So I'll turn it back over to Chris and she can wrap us out.
Thank you very much, Deb and Zach and Romine and John. We really appreciate your time and your expertise and your information. You've really given us a lot of great resources. Just a little bit of a note. John did mention our project management fundamentals class, as Zach had alluded to, that he attended. We did have one on the schedule in April of this year, but because of COVID had to move it. It really is a class that's much better in person than remote, although we're looking at some different options for remote. We are looking to have one of those project management fundamental classes hopefully in the fall. And if your campus or your area has a large group of people that would be interested in it, if you have some campuses all together, we are open to having one on a particular campus instead of at our Syracuse campus at the SUNY Center for Professional Development. So thank you everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of your day at vSTC. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
The recording will now end. Please make sure to leave the WebEx meeting space by clicking on the End Call button on the bottom of the WebEx session.